Hello and welcome to episode 7 of the Long Shot Podcast, brought to you by 342 Productions. I'm your host, Duncan Robinson, as always, and I'm here with my good friend, Reid.
We are back. Episode 7. How we feeling?
We're feeling good, man. I'm back in Miami, which is exciting. Coming off a 14-day road trip, little West Coast swing, if you will, which ended on a positive, which is great for not only myself, but the entire Miami Heat organization. So certainly nice to be back in Miami, particularly after ending it in Oklahoma City. Let me tell you, there is a stark contrast between Oklahoma City and Miami.
Yeah, but like you said, you guys were on the road for a while, 2 weeks, bouncing all over the place. Is it exhausting? Is it exciting? Travel is obviously a lot different this year than it would be in a typical year, so you can't really do much. But I assume it's very nice to be back.
It's definitely, I don't want to say a grind, because I try to keep in perspective that we're playing a kid's game and putting a ball in a hoop. But the travel is a lot. You learn to appreciate good hotel pillows. I'm not a hotel snob. I've had many nights, particularly in the G League, in a nice 4-point by Sheridan, perfectly fine with me. So not a hotel snob, but I have learned, like I said, to really appreciate a hotel that has nice linens and a nice pillow. That's a difference maker on the road. I'm not quite at the point where I bring my own pillow. I think there are vets that understand that and do that. I don't do that, so I'm really relying on the hotels. So we were betting about 75%. I think about 3/4 of the hotels had good pillows, but a couple of the stops could have been better.
All right, let's call them out. Who were they? Bad hotel pillows. Go.
Well,
no, I'm kidding.
Well, I'll say this: the one thing, and not to come with their pillows, but the hotel in Oklahoma City is a fascinating one. It's the Skirvin Hotel, which is this old, I think it's actually owned by Sheridan. Normally we stay in, I think we have a deal with Four Seasons. I'm not exactly sure how it breaks down, but that's usually where we're staying. But there isn't a Four Seasons in Oklahoma City. So we stay at the Skirvin Hotel, which I encourage you all to look this up. It is haunted. There's a story like some years ago, I don't know, 30, 40, whatever years ago, that somebody was like held hostage and murdered on one of the floors. This is true. I'm not making this up.
Oh, God.
And so now it's my least favorite hotel just because of that. It just is an eerie feeling being in that hotel. Everything's old, everything creaks. And then you just have everyone, mentioning stories about, back when we stayed here in 2012, this happened and that happened. And it's just like, it just doesn't ease the mind.
We are starting this episode on a weird note, but now I'm fascinated. I have heard you say this before. Do you have any personal stories of a scream in the middle of the night or, something that went awry?
I don't, but we had, I'm not going to name names, but earlier on in my Heat tenure, it got to the point where 2 teammates had to stay in the same room because there was such fear over what was going on in that hotel. And it's let me put it this way. I don't think they're totally crazy for doing so. I'm not saying that I've had anything weird happen, but there's been reported issues of sounds, creaks. I think there's been visual sightings, curtains moving, that type of thing. Once again, this is getting a little convoluted and we're getting a little bit in the weeds here. But if anybody is going to Oklahoma City, maybe you're into that type of thing and you should check out the Skirvin Hotel. But if you're not, then maybe steer clear.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Isn't there a TV show where people are chasing for haunted or chasing ghosts, chasing for haunted houses?
I think there is. And I'm sure that they've made a stop at that hotel. If they haven't, then they should.
Is there a campaign or has there ever been a campaign to switch hotels?
That's above my pay grade, Dave. I just show up, do my best every night to, like I said, put a ball in the hoop and stop the other team from doing so. So yeah, that's basically. I don't know how the West Coast swing summary turned into a 5-minute rant on the Skirvin Hotel, but here we are.
I'm so glad it did. I'm so glad that it did.
The real highlight of the trip, though, once again, it just keeps coming back to Oklahoma City, is that you made an appearance at one of our games, and it wasn't without trials and tribulations. So why don't you tell the people a little bit about what happened? If they didn't have the pleasure of following you on Instagram, you were giving them updates, which I not to shamelessly plug your Instagram, I highly recommend you all do follow. But yeah, tell the little people a bit about what happened.
So here's what you have to understand about the Midwest. We drive everywhere. So it's about a 4.5 hour drive from Kansas City to Oklahoma City. That's like going to the grocery store. That's nothing. So when I heard that I could potentially come down and watch you guys play, I was all in. I asked my mom and my sister to join me. Thankfully, they're always down for an adventure. So we packed up the car and we headed down in time to get to the game. We planned it out so we'd get down like an hour before the game. Again, it's like a 4.5 hour drive. About 3 hours in, we blow a tire, back left tire. My sister's driving. Things start to get a little bumpy. We don't know if it's the road or what's going on, but we quickly realize it's tire. So she pulls off to the side. We're on the interstate, mind you. So we're now on the side of the interstate, blown back left tire, semis whizzing by us. It's not a safe situation at all. On top of this, it's like 6 o'clock. We're about 2 hours out of Oklahoma City, and it's an 8 o'clock tip. So we don't have much time to waste here. So my mom calls AAA. We're seeing if AAA can come replace the tire for us. It's going to be a 3 hour wait until AAA can get to us because we are about an hour south of Wichita, Kansas, which for anyone who knows the Midwest means we are really in the middle of nowhere. We're like an hour south of Wichita, hour and a half, 2 hours from Oklahoma City. So, Duncan, there are moments in everyone's career that define who you are.
Right.
And so I looked at my mom, I looked at my sister, I said, guys, hop on my back. I got this.
You rolled up the sleeves.
I rolled up the sleeves. I took off the jacket. I said, here we go. Let's do this.
Wow. Was this your first time ever attempting to change a tire?
No. I'd done it before, so I had some confidence behind me. But keep in mind, we are on the side of the interstate. We're about 5 feet away from cars whizzing by us. It is not at all a safe situation. Also, it's the back left tire, and we pull off on the right side of the road, which means to change the tire, I am right there by traffic. So it's not good. But, we have to get this accomplished. So my mother, bless her, she walks about 50 yards behind the car, starts waving her hands, getting cars in the other lane. She's not on the interstate, mind you, but she's doing her best to get people's attention while I'm just going to work. We get the spare on, mission accomplished, but that's only checking off like the first issue of many issues now that we face. We've got a donut spare tire on that's not supposed to go more than 50 miles. We are 60 miles past Wichita and about 120 miles to Oklahoma City with really nothing in between. So
you're kind of in like the no man's land of like, what do we do? Like there's some serious, like you got to do some reflection on like, what's the right play here?
It's soul searching at this point.
Yeah.
So we either go back to Wichita, get a new tire, and then go back to Kansas City because we're not going to make it.
You missed the game at that point.
Missed the game. Here's the other wrinkle though. It's like 6 o'clock. So tire places are closed, which means if we're going back to Wichita, we're staying the night in Wichita, getting the tire fixed in the morning and going home. The other option is let's achieve greatness. Let's get to Oklahoma City.
Just keep pushing.
And, here's the beautiful thing about my mother and my sister. No words needed to be exchanged. We looked at each other and we knew we're pushing forward. So we get in the car. We're going to Oklahoma City. Mind you, this spare very clearly states no more than 50 miles an hour, no more than 50 miles. So I just want a massive disclaimer here. I do not recommend anyone do what we did. We went 120 miles at 50 miles an hour, got to Oklahoma City. And let me tell you, there are moments where you start to appreciate like the subtle things in life. Driving 120 miles on a spare tire is one of them. Like I started to appreciate having 4 solid tires, which no one sits in a car and appreciates their tires.
You take for granted, yeah.
I will do that forever moving forward because at any moment we knew that spare could have blown. And then what do we do? Now we have no spare. We're on the side of the road in the middle of nowhere. So it was risky. It probably wasn't the smartest decision. But ladies and gentlemen, we got to Oklahoma City at about 8:15. Tip-off was at 8. So by the time we got into the stadium, Duncan had already hit a 3. We missed that. But we saw, what we did see was the other 19 that followed. and a Heat win. And Duncan, I don't want to take all responsibility, but the point of me telling this story is I think I deserve a sprinkle because it just felt like destiny. It felt like I was supposed to be there. You guys were supposed to win that game. The stars aligned.
Yeah, well, going into that game, we knew it was a little bit of a trap game with, we were coming off a emotional win in LA, beating the Lakers, obviously a team that we had just played in the finals and wanted to enact some revenge on. It's the last game of a long road trip. Everyone's kind of itching to get home. So it's kind of your quintessential trap game. Something that we really talked about was if we're going to win this, we got to show some grit. But what it sounds like you really set the tone in that the grit started well before tip-off, somewhere off the highway in, southeast Wichita, Kansas, is where the grit was initially displayed. And from there, we just carried the torch, is what it seems like.
I'll tell you what, I gave it everything I had. We were going to give it our all to have that day be a successful one. I will say Oklahoma City, Chesapeake Arena took great care of us. There were 5 of us that came to the game. So I drove down with my mom and my sister, and then 2 friends of mine came to the game with me. So there were 5 of us. I believe you told me Miami got 8 guest tickets. The entire team got 8 guest tickets.
You were on the VIP list for sure.
We took 5 of them. We took 5 of them.
To be a select few. Well, with that being said, I think it's not like I get some sort of ridiculous privilege on that front. I think it's more so that just most people don't have people in Oklahoma City that are itching to come to Heat games. I think is more so what it is.
I wanted to position this as, you had extreme pull within the organization, but it's true. We actually, when we walked in, the ladies who were checking us in told us that this was the first time that more than 1 or 2 guests of the opposing team were at the game. So they were fired up. For them, it was like a party. There were 5 of us. They were giving us food, giving us water. We sat up at the club level. It was amazing. And it was actually really interesting. I don't know if you felt this as a player, but from the stands, it was such a contrast from Miami because I've had the privilege to go to a couple games in Miami, and they're now letting fans, they're playing music. You guys have the DJ, the mascot. It feels like an NBA environment. It's just the stands aren't as full. In Oklahoma City, no mascot. The music is much quieter. There were probably 20 people in the stands. Like it was just guests of the teams. So it was so much quieter from the stands. I was curious if you felt the same on the court.
Yeah, I mean, the Oklahoma City game felt much more like the games where there've just been no fans at all, which once again is the case for many of the places that we play. Actually, interestingly enough, we had a handful of stops on this road trip that did have fans. Houston had fans, Utah had fans, but the other California teams, there were no fans. So it's kind of been an interesting contrast between playing in front of, once again, it's only a couple thousand, but I think I've said this before on this podcast, in that when you grow accustomed to playing in front of nobody, a couple thousand feels like a packed venue. So yeah, I think last night, we're recording this on Tuesday, so this is last night as in against Oklahoma City, felt like just an empty gym. But of course it was not empty in that I was privileged enough to have you and really your family in attendance.
Yeah, it was great. It was great. And thank you again for the tickets. It was awesome. I wanted to ask you about the Max is Nice video. Have you seen that yet?
Davis, do you think I've seen it? Realistically, do you think that somebody with millions of followers on Instagram makes a parody video making fun of the way that I run? You think that in what world would I have not been sent that video hundreds and hundreds of times?
I thought maybe you'd intentionally blocked it out. I don't know.
I will say I am in the midst of a little bit of an Instagram cleanse, but that one's been sent to me a handful of times, to say the least.
So what do we think? Did he nail the form? It's pretty accurate, I think.
I mean, the running is kind of funny. Like I get that, and I think he's funny. I think in general, those, like it's in good fun, and the running I got a little chuckle out of. I don't fully think like the shot recreation is like totally there. Like I don't think the form is really all that similar, but I do applaud them for the effort. And honestly, I feel in some respects like it's a little bit of a career milestone to now be to the point where I can get like made fun of. You know, it's almost like if if you're not getting talked about at all, then it's like, I don't really know where I'm going with this.
No, 100%. It's like if Saturday Night Live makes fun of you. It's like you're clearly relevant,
right?
And here's is that a massive compliment to Max? Is nice, maybe. For those who don't know, he's imitating players on social media. Typically making fun of the way that they move. And I agree with you. The shot was a C. The run was an A. The run is what really made that video special.
Yeah, I'll give him some credit on the run. I commented on it. I laughed. I thought it was funny. And he seems like a good dude. Never met him personally, but we've interacted a little bit via social media. But speaking of social media, let's transition into our Reddit question of the week. What do you got?
Yeah, let's do it. This one comes from Guy Carbino Goat. He gets credit for the post, but it's posting a quote that comes from Spoelstra post-game against the Lakers, which is legendary. I don't know if you've seen this, but Spo after the game, after you guys beat the Lakers, was asked about LeBron and the matchup in the finals. And he said in the finals, LeBron was making adjustments to our adjustments to the adjustments and not making an adjustment to the adjustment. I thought about making an adjustment, and he knew I was making a bluff. So legendary quote from Spo, but I think what he's trying to say here is just giving LeBron credit for how intelligent he is on the court, and especially after he plays a team in the finals 6 times, I assume he has a great grasp on what's going on. And the purpose of this post isn't to give LeBron a ton of credit, but it's more, I'm curious for you, now that you guys have played them, is the approach different because you had that battle with them last season? Obviously rosters change a little bit, but do you feel like you know them very well and that wasn't just like a typical regular season game?
It's interesting. We're going through walkthrough and kind of talking over some things. Obviously a lot of what we were looking back on was the series last year, and that would kind of serve as a starting point for game plans and that sort of thing. LeBron is so strategic in how he approaches the game. I think it gets talked about so much to the point where, I don't know, it can just kind of be lip service, I guess, but it's talked about for good reason, and that it's very real, and that I didn't realize it until I was in it, in that really in the playoffs last year or in the finals, it's almost like he's playing chess, in that when he gets the ball at the top of the key, he's like moving players, pointing, manipulating things, getting the floor structured to exactly his liking before he attacks. And I think that it's magnified in the playoffs because the possessions go down, the game is slowed down, and every possession matters more. So he gets to that. You don't see it a lot during the regular season, or I should say you don't see it as much, maybe, the last 4 or 5 minutes of a game. What was really interesting about this game is that I think because of the familiarity between the two teams, as we just played, 4 or 5 months ago in a 6-game series, is that he got to that stuff way earlier than I think anybody expected. And I just thought it was interesting in that, you had this feel early on that it was just kind of going to be a regular season game where you kind of go back and forth and teams go on runs and this and that. And it changed pretty early on where it felt totally different, and it reflected in the score. The score was down, I think it was 94, 96 or whatever it was. The scoring was down, the possessions were down, and large part was, particularly offensively for them, is they started to get, LeBron, I should say, started to get strategic on how they were going to attack us. And I think, I'm not like pretending to be inside his mind, but I imagine a part of that is due to the fact that they know how familiar we are with them and what they want to do offensively. So I think he felt that he kind of needed to take it to a little bit more detailed, specific level on really getting the spacing and the floor set up the right way to attack.
I thought it was really interesting watching that game, and you obviously know this better than I do, but it felt different than a typical regular season game. Like, it did feel like down the stretch, particularly, LeBron and the Lakers were doing similar things that they were doing to you guys in the finals, where he was putting you in a lot of pick and rolls. He was putting Tyler in pick and rolls. Like, he was getting to that action whenever he could. And it became like this chess match, like you said, of, okay, how are we going to, alter this coverage? Because, he'd seen this quite a bit, like you talked about. So it had that feel. I'm curious. I don't know. I don't know if I'm off there, but
no, I think you're right. I think that typically will happen late in even regular season games. There have been games this year that have felt like that, particularly in the last 5 or 6 minutes. Last year, I wasn't able to reflect on, oh yeah, that felt like a playoff game, because I didn't know what a playoff game felt like. Right. But now, having had the experience of being in the playoffs, I can now speak to that. And like even we had a couple games against the Knicks, it actually felt coming down the wire like playoff games. So I don't think the Lakers one was like totally unique. I think that it sticks out a little bit just because of the recent history that we have between the two of us, but definitely interesting and definitely worth noting. So yeah, I love the quote from Spo. I think just the two of them, two great basketball minds. And I think it speaks to just how much like the mental manipulating a game, controlling a game matters at this level.
Yeah. All right. You want to hit our long shot feature this week?
Yeah, we got a great one. This has been a favorite segment of mine repeatedly, and this one is not going to disappoint at all. We got our guy Sam Grew.
Yeah.
My guy Sam grew up a stud athlete in the great state of Indiana, the Hoosier State. He was playing football, 7th grade. He starts to experience some pain in his right leg. This is what now 6-7 years ago. Starts to experience some pain in his right leg. Later that year, he learns that he has bone cancer in his right knee. And if he wants to continue to be able to be mobile and active, that they were going to need to amputate his leg.
Yeah.
So he gets his leg amputated after about 6 months in the hospital and a successful procedure. He gets back to what he loves most. And of course, that's sports and competing. So he continues to play football, basketball, lacrosse, all on a prosthetic leg, and eventually finds track and field after learning how to walk, basically reteach himself how to move and walk and run. So he finds track and field and he starts doing high jumping. And a few years later, in 2015, he worked his way up to becoming the world champion in 2015 in the Paralympics.
That's insane. It's just like, yeah, fast forward a couple years and now he's a world champion.
Right.
It's like, what? It's just what it's just incredible.
So that's not where the accolades stop. He goes on to win the silver medal in the Rio Paralympics in 2016. And the gold medal in the 2017 and 2019 World Championships. And now he is on campus at Notre Dame. He's on the track team, and he'll be graduating this spring and, of course, attending medical school, and all while training for the Tokyo Olympics. So it's a pretty impressive story to hear, to come from bone cancer at a young age to now turn the ultimate adversity into just an incredible turnaround and the blessing that he is now living today, a world champion and on his way to, becoming a doctor. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah. Amazing. His story was brought to us by his coach, his high jump coach. And he sent some videos over that were just kind of telling his story. Because his story's been somewhat fairly documented. I think there was like an ESPN special on him a couple of years ago. But yeah, it's just amazing. It's just amazing. And in those videos, it talks about how he'd never done track and field before. But now that he has a new leg and prosthetic leg, and he's got to figure out kind of how he can maneuver and what he can do on it, he finds track and field. And yeah, then like you said, the rest is history. So another remarkable story. We're keeping him rolling.
That's big time. So shout out to Sam. We're excited to push out some of the content. You guys can, maybe see him jump. I don't know if we have that ability, but certainly some pictures just kind of documenting his story. So once again, shout out to Sam.
Yep, absolutely. And then we got a great discussion. Excited for it.
Kendrick Nunn, aka None Better. This is a fun one. Instead of one word, I'm going to use a little, I can't remember what you call them, but like a hyphenated kind of little saying. I'm going to call it in the mud.
Ooh.
Or out the mud. Let's go out the mud.
Out the mud.
This, because I think Kanan, just everything, hearing his story, coming from Chicago and just all the adversity that he's faced along the way to get to where he is, it is safe to say that Kendrick got it out the mud.
Yeah, I agree. You kind of cheated there. I think we're supposed to
But
keep it to a
it's
word.
a hyphenated one word, out the mud. So it's
Sure.
3 words hyphenated into one.
We'll let it go this time because it's accurate. I'll say this. My takeaway from the conversation with him is his confidence is inspiring. And it's well-deserved, for the record. Like, he talks about all the work he's put in to earn that confidence, because he has. But it's just palpable. Like, it came through the screen. I think I left the conversation more confident in myself just from talking to him.
You're feeling like you could go out there and get 15-7?
I really think I could. Yeah, I really
Speaking of which, keep on the lookout. We got a Davis Reid highlight tape dropping this week. Pretty exciting stuff. Not quite the dynamic lefty that Kendrick is, but he's a pretty dynamic lefty.
I don't know if I'm excited for this to happen, but yes.
I'm thrilled. I can't wait.
Coming.
All right, here's Kendrick.